Ginny and I will be talking about a faculty development project related to information literacy that we developed with Dr. Kenna Onwuzurioha, who's the Writing Across the Curriculum champion for the Fresno State campus. So Kenna works in Africana Studies, but she also has the role of leading workshops for faculty who are developing courses, and we work together on this project. So I'm going to start out talking about how this project happened in response to a campus assessment with results that were somewhat disappointing in the context of our 10-year accreditation visit, and how we decided to respond through collaboration. And I think there are a lot of connections with critical thinking. I've already been talking with Christina Macias about some connections with her project. I hope that there'll be some things here for everyone. We'll be talking about the timeline for the development of our project and what prompted it, but I wanted to start by talking a little bit about information literacy and how it's connected with critical thinking. So if you look at Dr. Macias's poster over there, the umbrella, we have critical thinking, and underneath it we have 6 concepts. One of them is information literacy. Information literacy went through a huge transformation in the 1990s as we all made the transition from thinking about our expertise primarily and what we teach to focusing more on what do we want students to learn, what do we want students to be able to do when they graduate from college. And some of that was driven by increased awareness of how people learn, learning theory, wanting to have our intended impact on students, and seeing our classrooms as sort of a laboratory where we would try to improve our practice in order to help students become, in our case, information literate. And part of it was, of course, driven by movements around assessment and accreditation, where in addition to needing to do our teaching, we were facing an increased pressure to really demonstrate our value and the impact that we were having. So some of it was very positive, and some of it was driven more by administrative pressures. So in the world of information literacy, we started with the words that our dean, Janet Crum, used in opening the conference. So information literacy back in the 1990s, the Stone Age, was students' ability to identify an information need and then to find and evaluate information and use it to accomplish a particular purpose. So a nice, well-rounded description of many practices that overlap with information literacy, but somewhat sort of procedure-based, and maybe not describing the skills that students need for an evolving world. And right now, we're just seeing an explosion in the evolution of individuals' relationship to information, how fast information is changing, how it's created, the role of machines. So everything is changing around us at a time when we're also very accountable to achieve these student learning outcomes or help to drive them. So in the case of librarians, where we have these ideas related to information literacy that are about students, sometimes we have a limited role in students' educational experience. So our involvement can be somewhat episodic. We have a variety of instructional activities that we do. Frequently, we're invited by faculty to do guest lectures or to collaborate with them on assignment design, and we'll talk about some of those things. But it can be challenging to have the impact that we intend. Information literacy, the definition is also evolving, and now we have a definition. Information literacy is a set of integrated abilities encompassing the reflective discovery of information, the understanding of how information is produced and valued, and the use of information in creating new knowledge and participating ethically in communities of learning. So given our role on campus, this isn't something that we can do alone to have this impact on students. We really need to collaborate with others on campus, and that includes faculty, but in my case, I've also had a role in institutional assessment. I've worked with EDUCAUSE. I've led a national organization that's focused on impacting information literacy and working with accreditors. So there are many different activities that we need to do, and the most important ones are the ones that we do with faculty in your classrooms. So our project really was driven, if you wouldn't mind getting this slide, by this assessment experience that we had. So as I said, Fresno State had our 10-year accreditation visit, and we have a set of core competencies, one of which is evaluated every year. And in the year that we were working on our campus accreditation report, the topic of the assessment was information literacy. So since we don't have an information class or an information literacy major, really it was important to find a way to involve faculty around campus in conducting this assessment project. And we had a task force that was composed of faculty from every college, along with me and a number of librarians, to figure out how we would actually conduct this assessment. So we did an observational assessment of 50 students where we had them conduct a searching task. And we watched them and had them talk through how they were thinking about the information problem that we presented and what they planned to do to locate and evaluate the information. And then more importantly, the cross-campus task force, which included several faculty from psychology, for example, who had expertise in measurement, and faculty from other departments, was to look at 150 student papers using a rubric, which was developed by the AACU. We modified the rubric as a group to try to improve it so that we felt that it could adequately evaluate the information skills of students as they approach graduation, so in their final 3 semesters at the university. So we got together, and the full studies are published online, if you want to get the slide. Thank you so much. And what we found in this sort of high-stakes assessment that took us all year basically to conduct was that our students, we had set a benchmark, and our students almost reached the benchmark for every area of the assessment. So we had different dimensions of information literacy, like searching, using information ethically by the use of citation, for example. So students were close, when it came to those different dimensions. But we also found that for the students near graduation, they narrowly missed most of the benchmarks that we set. And the other thing that occurred was that when we worked with our Office of Institutional Excellence, OIE, to conduct a statistically valid study of how different groups of students were doing, we determined that students who were in underrepresented minority groups, so those groups that have been impacted by inequality and were a Hispanic serving institution, as well as an institution with a large number of minoritized students. So we found that those students didn't meet the benchmark in a few areas in a way that differed statistically significant way from other students. So we felt that it was important. I met with our dean, with the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and with our Faculty Director of Assessment to determine what actions we would take to try to move the needle on this issue. So we decided to do a couple of things. It's very hard as we think about correlation and causation, our involvement in the curriculum. It's very hard to move the needle on this kind of learning outcome at scale. So what we decided to do was to start really small with a pilot that built on work that some of us have been doing for decades to work with faculty to develop meaningful research experiences for students that would occur in the disciplines. So the heart of our intervention was to try to develop these models that would work in different disciplinary contexts and in different courses. So we invited 10 faculty who we felt were really influential among their peers and very involved in research and writing on campus, to attend a 4-hour workshop, and they did some preparation beforehand and produced some products afterward, where we attempted to develop new models for meaningful research writing experiences in their courses. And afterwards, we offered a feedback survey and collected deliverables from the faculty. Do you want to talk more about the workshop?
Did you mention they got a stipend?
Oh, they got a stipend. So our dean sponsored a small stipend, which was most of my time this year was spent trying to actually get them paid, which was kind of funny. But everyone did receive a stipend, and everyone completed the deliverables and met with their librarian as part of that experience. Yeah. Go ahead.
So a little bit more about the content of the workshop. We talked about threshold concepts. That was kind of the through line in the material we included in the workshop, and also something that in the feedback survey faculty said they valued the most. And we were looking at concepts both in writing and in information literacy. So working with Dr. Onwuzuwaroha, we wanted to collaborate across both of our disciplines in writing and in information literacy and include both of these. Because we felt like, every discipline has their threshold concepts. Those for writing and information literacy are really, really critical for the research process. These are the core ones we looked at, and we also have a great reference material you can look at later. But in particular, the Bean and Meltzer Engaging Ideas, a Professor's Guides to Integrating Writing, Critical Thinking, and Active Learning in the Classroom. We did have the faculty read a chapter of that before the workshop. It was a 30-page chapter, and they all read it. So, but they did take away a lot from that, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's in the content, and as we continue. Okay, so some key workshop outcomes. We also found we had a really great discussion with faculty. That was another thing that they really enjoyed from the workshop, was just having the opportunity to talk about research with colleagues that were in completely different disciplines, and also kind of commiserate about the similar struggles they're having, one of which is AI, of course. And where that discussion went was talking about how kind of the policing of AI in the classroom, the AI proofing, has really been detrimental and kind of interrupted the learning process and undermined the trust between faculty and students. And how can we work through this? So some of the things that we talked about as a group were kind of those sub-skills that we could break up into different in-class activities throughout the semester, like close reading, personal writing, active research, and so on. So that was a direction that the conversation went. After the workshop, we did not really a formal analysis of the deliverables a professor sent, but we got together and we identified some themes we saw that we thought are great hallmarks of effective research assignment design. And we are developing a kind of rubric and self-assessment tool that actually we printed out some copies of if people are interested in, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about those. In addition, we would like to, this was a pilot, so we would like to do the workshop again, but also perhaps like break it up into different sections, because we almost didn't cover everything in detail. I know people are really oversaturated with the AI thing, but that was one part of the workshop, and maybe we could focus more on different aspects of it. We also developed an information literacy toolkit, which is a research guide available from our website. We'll also share a link to that later. And we want to build it out. So right now it has a few resources, but we would like to include more assignment design tools, sample assignments, activities, readings, and other things for faculty to reference and kind of use as they would like. All right, so this is a quote from one of the faculty participants. She's in the School of Business. And we felt it really captured one of the issues we see a lot in student research, which she says students often treat research papers as information gathering exercises rather than critical inquiry. So they're really more worried about finding the, like kind of I said with the Wikipedia thing, finding the right kind of sources versus spending that time really richly like delving into them and analyzing them. So we also talked about assignment design in the workshop, and what we really were encouraging faculty do was innovate the traditional research assignment, which is a genre that doesn't really exist in the real world. And this raft and tip is a framework from Bean and Meltzer that they use to design effective research assignments. So in particular, thinking about the students, who's their audience, and thinking about what is a real research project in your discipline that students could, that would be interesting for students. So we have a couple examples. These are materials just from the Fresno County government website. One of them is a New Citizen's Guide to Voting. So maybe it's political science and you're thinking of a general public audience and you have to create like this guide, but maybe it's for people who speak different languages. There's another example that is a family safety plan, and this is actually a graphic that is for children, so that's a different type of audience. There'll be different types of products depending on what your discipline is. Another example from a colleague I have, another librarian friend I have, they do an assignment that's focused on modern day slavery. So this is a little bit more of maybe on the lines of a traditional research paper, but they have that task that is that presents as an intriguing problem. So they have to pick a product and they research the supply line and how human trafficking is involved in that. So that's a kind of an interesting take and presents a problem that is interesting for students, and I think this just adds more opportunity for creativity, both for the faculty member and for the students.
Yeah. So as Ginny said, this particular workshop, N of 10, right? So we have 10 people with us, and really the workshop content though was built on a number of large initiatives that we've all been involved in. So for example, I was the assessment consultant for a Mellon-funded research-based learning project at UC Berkeley, where we had cohorts of 25 faculty every year for a number of years during the project, where we tried to identify what are the hallmarks of effective research assignments and how can they function well to help students achieve the learning outcomes that we set for them, and how can there be that creative spark and that connection to things that are of interest in the discipline. And for this group, what is the connection with critical thinking? Is there one? Should there be one? How should we collaborate together to try to impact these learning outcomes? So we organized what we found in the literature from those previous experiences and in the products faculty created, which included their revised or new assignment to reflect what they learned in the workshop, as well as a reflection paper where they described what changes they plan to make and how those changes were grounded in the literature and resources that we shared. So those hallmarks, those hallmarks, for example, include the number one thing is designing that core task that connects research and writing to the discipline and the tasks that people will need to do in that particular discipline. Others that are on the sheet connect with the backward design process. And I would say out of those, really a key one for research and writing is the scaffolding. So how can in-class learning activities, for example, active learning exercises or mini assignments that lead up to the main product be structured so that students actually pause to reflect on what they're learning, learn skills related to close reading, communication, and writing to bring those learning outcomes into the classroom. So All of the things that we found so far are on the sheet that we brought that's connected with the guide that we created. And so we'll continue to place products there as we receive permission from the faculty that we're working with. Our plans going forward are to use what we find to develop, as Ginny said, additional workshops, but also to confer with faculty about the hallmarks we identified. We have some quotes from them in order to refine those and hopefully connect with folks who are working on critical thinking and AI in order to find out, like where are the intersections and where can we be helpful to one another. I would say at the heart of what we're doing is number 3, creating a supportive learning environment through collaboration. So getting the right experts into the room to help faculty develop things, but also to support students so that there's not a lot of additional weight falling on the faculty who are teaching the courses and developing their syllabi. Was there, okay, so this is the guide that I just spoke about, and we'll continue to link materials. So we have a list of resources here that we've talked about, as well as we'll be placing this hallmark sheet there and continuing to refine it in collaboration with faculty. Here, we'll be speaking with other librarians in the CSU also, and all of us are starting to collaborate with folks around critical thinking as well. So there are a lot of connections there to explore, just to support one another and support our students. The final quote, students need to develop from believing knowledge is certain and external, and this is one that I'm not sure it completely connects with the approach that you all are exploring, to understanding complexity and their own role in making meaning. So something we can talk about later. Yeah. And here's our info and all of the resources and references. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.